Matter 6. More information on Anglican's murder inquiry. Police now certain a targeted attack called Heaven Police again. Massive reports on Heaven server. Also tonight. COVID PPE was wasted on equipment due to the pandemic in hospitals across the UK. Also, UK warnings with fires across Derbyshire related to happen across Derbyshire and the Lake District for Harpur latest. Also this evening. I've been on 6, I'm going to talk more about Fair Hillsborough. And England prepare for their World Cup semi-final against Argentina. We'll have more on that and Weber with Sarah Keith Lucas. Welcome to the BBC News at 6 and Keegan Dobby at partner. Running information on the murder of Ant Winnicombe has come in 24 hours after new CCTV footage among us after vehicle on the day of her death. Now to confirm the police arrested a 26-year-old man in Rotherham on arrested him on Monday evening. Well, it's been confirmed that Ant's murder was a plan, was an attack, and the person that was arrested planned it months ago. And Sarah Keith is under the we'll continue with Sarah. Push report now from Yasmin Watson has this report.
you an update on a case that has very much dominated the headlines since the first news broke last week of the shocking death of Anne Widdecombe. Firstly, as you will understand, this incident has had a deeply distressing impact on Miss Widdecombe's family, and we're doing all we can to support them alongside our colleagues in Devon and Cornwall. The thoughts of everybody at counter-terrorism policing are with them at what is a very challenging time. As we confirmed yesterday, Counter-Terrorism South East are now leading the investigation into the death of Anne Widdecombe. This is due to new information and evidence coming to light following the arrest of a 28-year-old man on Saturday in South Yorkshire. I know there will be lots of questions about what that new information is, but this is a live investigation, so I'm limited on the details that I can give. However, it is clear that this was a targeted attack. We are still working to understand the extent of any planning or preparation and the motivation that sits behind that attack. And I do not want to comment further on this at this stage of our inquiries. Extensive searches have taken place at an address in Rotherham, and scenes remain in place as that activity continues. We have also been granted a warrant of further detention, which means the suspect can now be held for questioning for up to 7 days under the Terrorism Act. He remains under arrest on suspicion of commission, preparation or instigation of acts of terrorism, as well as on suspicion of murder. This is a complex investigation, and there are multiple lines of inquiry that we are pursuing expeditiously, including digital forensic examinations. I am very aware of the significant levels of public interest in this case.
Oh, for God's sake.
Case, given that Miss Widdecombe was such a high-profile political and public figure and familiar to many. I do not intend to address every bit of speculation we have seen, but I would like to use this opportunity to remind the public that investigations of this type are complex and new information can emerge as officers progress their inquiries. And we intend to release further information when it's available and when it is appropriate to do so. So please allow us to do our job thoroughly and carefully, and think before sharing any unverified information. It is important to remember that this is a murder investigation, following a brutal attack on a 78-year-old lady in her own home. I want to ensure that our work is conducted sensitively and considers the impact of what has happened. I would like to end by reassuring all of those who knew or knew of Anne Widdecombe that our excellent teams of investigators are working incredibly hard with the aim of securing justice for her and her family. So please, if you have any information that you think might help us with this investigation, please contact the police. Thank you very much.
So that was Lawrence Taylor, the head of counter-terrorism police, speaking outside New Scotland Yard. Let's go straight back to our correspondent Dan Whitehead. And Dan, confirming many of the things that you said, the police are going to be searching the address. They have more time to do that. They have 7 days now with this suspect, and also pleading with the public and all of us to not spread misinformation. Communication has been quite a key part of this investigation, hasn't it? Because the story has changed from when you first covered it last Friday to a 26-year-old to a 28-year-old being arrested and then not being terrorism to suddenly it being suggested that it's terrorism. The communication is quite key, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, lightning speed is how the Chief Constable of Devon and Cornwall described it. I think it was on Sunday, and that's very true. I mean, we're on day 6 now. It's nearly a week since Anne Widdecombe died inside her property on Dartmoor, and in that time, we have had someone arrested 12 hours later, released without charge. We've had other police forces involved. We've had raids on properties 270 miles away, and now we've had counter-terrorism police taking over this investigation. That has given it a focus in terms of the new charge which this 28-year-old suspect. So I think the concentration really starts in Rotherham on Saturday night, 9 o'clock in the evening, when that 28-year-old British male was arrested at that house. And he, of course, has been in custody since then. The news that he was rearrested came on Monday. We're waiting for clarification exactly when he was rearrested. That's the time that starts for the 7 days that they now have to continue questioning him on 2 sets of charges, one on terrorism charges, one on suspicion of murder. The top line this afternoon coming from police is that they can confirm that this was clearly a targeted attack. That is significant because in those early days there was speculation, was talk of whether or not this was a bungled burglary of some sort. But what has clearly emerged is that there's nearly 300 miles of travel involved for what is now understood to be a targeted attack with some planning and some preparation. There was still no update really on the motivation, and Lawrence Taylor didn't want to be drawn on the speculation surrounding that. Of course, this is a difficult balance for counter-terrorism police, given the length of time now that this is going on. It's clearly a complex investigation with a huge appetite for information amongst the public. They have to tread that line to not jeopardise the investigation, which continues. As I say, there was a Q&A, an off-camera Q&A, just before that statement we've seen outside New Scotland Yard. Some of those questions revealed some quite interesting answers which we can bring you. First question was this an attack on reform?
Excuse me, boss, could I have a rolling backpack for £100? £100?
Are you sure you want all these backpacks?
No, I only need one.
Don't you know, this backpack is only £2.50 on Temu right now.
£2.50? Really?
Let's go live to Exeter, where the Police and Crime Commissioner of the Devon and Cornwall Police, Alison Hernandez, is speaking following the murder of the former MP Anne Widdecombe. Let's listen.
Investigation, and I've been given assurance that there's been a smooth handover from Devon and Cornwall Police of the investigation to counter-terrorism. There's been quite a bit of commentary about the way that Devon and Cornwall Police have communicated during the early stages of this case, but as the Home Secretary said yesterday, it is not unusual that in a fast-paced investigation, more information comes to light and changes the nature or the character of what the police are dealing with. Since beginning the investigation, I've been briefed by the Chief Constable regularly, and I'm confident that Devon and Cornwall Police has provided a substantial and professional response to Anne Widdecombe's death. I'm particularly grateful to members of the public who have provided information and assisted officers in progressing the investigation. My thoughts remain with Anne's family and friends, and I've been touched by the many stories that I have heard from those who lived close to her on Dartmoor. Whatever you thought of her politics, Anne was an exceptionally likeable character. When I visited the scene on Sunday, I was impressed by the efforts being made by the police to speak to residents and address their understandable concerns. I'm sure the impact of this major operation has meant that some people have had to wait longer than they would expect for routine services or have not yet had their issues resolved, and I apologise for that. But I have been assured that officers and staff will be returning to business as usual over the coming days, which are also expected to be particularly busy with 2 final legs of the World Cup and the start of the school holidays. That's all I have to offer you today, so thank you very much. I won't be taking questions, and I look forward to seeing you soon, and thank you for your exceptional coverage of the information that's been shared so far, and kept, I will say, dealt with in a very professional manner, so thank you very much.
I'm Lawrence Taylor, Assistant Commissioner, the head of National Counter-Terrorism Policing. I'm here to provide you an update on a case that has very much dominated the headlines since the first news broke last week of the shocking death of Anne Widdecombe. Firstly, as you will understand, this incident has had a deeply distressing impact on Miss Widdecombe's family, and we're doing all we can to support them alongside our colleagues in Devon and Cornwall. The thoughts of everybody at Counter-Terrorism Policing are with them at what is a very challenging time. As we confirmed yesterday, Counter-Terrorism South East are now leading the investigation into the death of Anne Widdecombe. This is due to new information and evidence coming to light following the arrest of a 28-year-old man on Saturday in South Yorkshire. I know there will be lots of questions about what that new information is, but this is a live investigation, so I'm limited on the details that I can give. However, it is clear that this was a targeted attack. We are still working to understand the extent of any planning or preparation and the motivation that sits behind that attack, and I do not want to comment further on this at this stage of our inquiries. Extensive searches have taken place at an address in Rotherham, and scenes remain in place as that activity continues. We have also been granted a warrant of further detention, which means the suspect can now be held for questioning for up to 7 days under the Terrorism Act. He remains under arrest on suspicion of commission, preparation, or instigation of acts of terrorism, as well as on suspicion of murder. This is a complex investigation, and there are multiple lines of inquiry that we are pursuing expeditiously, including digital forensic examinations. I am very aware of the significant levels of public interest in this case, given that Ms Widdecombe was such a high-profile political and public figure and familiar to many. I do not intend to address every bit of speculation we have seen, but I would like to use this opportunity to remind the public that investigations of this type are complex and new information can emerge as officers progress their inquiries. And we intend to release further information when it's available and when it is appropriate to do so. So please allow us to do our job thoroughly and carefully, and think before sharing any unverified information. It is important to remember that this is a murder investigation following a brutal attack on a 78-year-old lady in her own home. I want to ensure that our work is conducted sensitively and considers the impact of what has happened. I would like to end by reassuring all of those who knew or knew of Anne Widdecombe that our excellent teams of investigators are working incredibly hard with the aim of securing justice for her and her family. So please, if you have any information that you think might help us with this investigation, please contact the police. Thank you very much.
From Goggles For You, you can get these amazing glasses for only £6.95. There are so many styles to choose from, and the quality is top-notch. Say goodbye to spending hundreds on glasses and hello to stylish and budget-friendly eyewear. Order today!
Right.
Minister's commitment to a country based on justice and fairness, and we thank him for that. He has honoured his commitment.
Next, during the coronavirus pandemic, the inquiry still goes on and says money that was wasted on doctors and nurses' PPE to treat patients up and down hospitals across the UK. Because there's another inquiry into what happened during the pandemic. People believe that this led to a lot more deaths and a lot more patients could have been saved. This report now from Rebecca Williams has this report. Of course, the biggest. Kill it! Just kill it with some Just kill it with a spray! Why? You gotta get rid of it before I have my balls. You gotta get rid of it before I have my balls.
afternoon to you. Breaking news, and a COVID inquiry has found almost... Very good afternoon to you. Breaking news, and the COVID inquiry has found almost £10 billion spent on protecting during the pandemic. The last phase concluded. Failures and systemic flaws left frontline workers without adequate PPE. Let's bring in our health correspondent, Ashish Joshi. Ashish, tell us more about what we're learning.
This is yet another damning indictment of the government's chaotic mismanagement. These were the people who were responsible for supply lines and procuring PPE when the country needed it most. This 279-page report lays bare just how ill-prepared the government was and how badly it handled securing vital supplies during the pandemic. This module deals with procurement. This was absolutely crucial in making sure that the country was protected. Health workers were guarded against this deadly disease, and patients had access to the medical equipment which would keep them alive. Well, this report says it simply wasn't prepared, and the country struggled to cope. Baroness Hallett, the chair of the UK's COVID-19 inquiry, says the government spent almost £15 billion on PPE. And of that £15 billion, it wasted £10 billion on stock that simply wasn't fit for purpose. We'll all remember the images of those nurses wearing black bin liners, care workers wearing plastic bags because they didn't have the protective equipment they needed to look after the sick and the dying. Now, this report finds systemic failures, inadequate planning, delays in getting the ventilators and the vital testing equipment that the country desperately needed. Baroness Hallett says the country entered the pandemic with its PPE stockpile in a perilous state, without enough vital supplies and with large quantities of expired equipment. There were no plans in place for emergency procurement or distribution. And we were, she says, simply not ready to compete in the global market race, and we were over-reliant on one single country, China. You'll remember, too, the high priority lane, which the government said would mean faster access to these vital goods. Well, that was heavily criticised as being unfair because suppliers with government connections received favourable treatment, undermining public trust at a moment when it was needed most. But she does stop at saying this report does not identify cronyism or corruption on the part of ministers and officials. They simply got it wrong with the introduction of this VIP lane. Now, this report does not feature evidence on the PPE firm MedPro linked to Tory peer Baroness Michelle Mone and her husband Doug Barrowman. They've been ordered to repay £122 million plus interest to the government for providing faulty PPE at the height of the pandemic. Mone and Barrowman deny any wrongdoing. There is some praise for the country's business and science sector for rallying to help. There's also praise for the army in providing vital logistical expertise. But ultimately, this report lays bare just how underprepared the country was in the face of this pandemic. Ultimately, we wasted millions and millions of pounds, and this led to unnecessary delays. That means many more lives could and should have been saved. So the headlines will always be who could have been saved. There were people who should have been better protected, health workers who were on the front line, key workers who needed that vital PPE equipment, and ultimately patients who needed access to vital life-saving equipment which didn't arrive in time. But the fact that the business community pulled together, there is also praise for the private and public sector partnerships that work together, and there is a list of 12 recommendations which Baroness Hallett says must go into the next pandemic to make sure that we are prepared.
COVID-19 pandemic, in the procurement and distribution of PPE, ventilators and testing equipment. It marks a halfway point in the publication of the inquiry's reports, a process which I intend to complete by this time next year. When the COVID-19 pandemic struck, the world entered a desperate race to secure vital healthcare equipment and supplies. If governments failed to procure the required equipment and supplies, key workers, including health and social care workers, could not be properly protected. Their lives and the lives of those for whom they cared were put at risk. Governments, including those of the United Kingdom, were engaged in a fierce competition during the crisis. International demand skyrocketed, prices rose uncontrollably, and global supply chains buckled under enormous strain. At the same time, the emergency stockpile of PPE and other equipment available to the UK was inadequate to meet the huge surge in demand. In the global battle to procure equipment and supplies, the UK was simply not ready to compete. The UK entered the pandemic with inadequate and untested plans to increase its emergency procurement and distribution operations rapidly, and the bodies responsible were caught off guard. In the face of this fundamental lack of readiness, ministers and officials were forced to improvise. Untested emergency procurement and distribution systems had to be developed within days. Against this backdrop, decision makers were confronted with an unenviable choice: put large sums of public money at risk to buy equipment at the speed and scale the pandemic demanded, or slow the process down and potentially lose out to international competitors. They decided to take the risk and buy. Given the scale of the emergency, this was the right choice. To have done otherwise would have placed those working on the front line in the health and social care sectors and the wider public in unacceptable danger. However, had there been better planning, the choice would not have been so stark, and the decision to buy at risk was not without considerable cost and widespread waste. Under the pressure of responding to the emergency, mistakes were made, leading to the waste of public money, as well as allegations of cronyism and corruption. Furthermore, the structures established to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic did not sufficiently integrate procurement and distribution. It was difficult to work out what was needed, what was being supplied, and what was being transported. The technology and data systems for emergency procurement and distribution were outdated. These were systemic failures which could have been avoided. The total expenditure by the UK government and devolved administrations on PPE, ventilators and testing equipment between January 2020 and June 2022 was over £42 billion. Governments across the UK did not have the systems and processes in place for emergency spending at this scale. The waste of taxpayers' money was vast. It is a stark fact that of the approximately £15 billion spent on PPE, nearly 2/3, almost £10 billion, was wasted. These figures demand a fundamental change in how the UK prepares for emergency procurement. Had ministers and officials been better equipped with appropriate plans, information and systems, procurement decisions would have been easier, fairer and far less costly, and equipment would have reached those who needed it faster. The public must be able to trust that their money is being spent by the government with propriety, fairness and transparency. I have found that public confidence, so important in an emergency, was undermined by the failures in procurement. There have been well-documented complaints about the quality of the PPE which was procured by the government and delivered to the front line. I have already examined how this affected those working in the health sector in my Module 3 report, and I will examine its impact on the social care sector in my Module 6 report to be published this autumn. One aspect of the response has understandably, and in my view rightly, been the subject of significant public concern: the high priority lane, also known as the VIP lane. officials under intense pressure from ministers to ensure that Office of Help were being managed properly, established the high priority lane. However, it was a misguided attempt at prioritisation. In responding to the crisis, some suppliers were given favourable treatment simply on account of their connections with the government. The high priority lane embedded unfairness in the UK government's emergency procurement, where billions of pounds were at stake. It undermined the otherwise enormous and well-intentioned efforts made by procurement officials, and it undermined public trust in how the government chose to spend taxpayers' money during the pandemic. It should not have been set up, and it should not be repeated. I have examined the award of contracts to particular suppliers. One of these is PPE MedPro Limited, which is the subject of an ongoing criminal investigation. It is not this inquiry's role to determine criminal or civil liability. My findings about the process leading to contracts being awarded to PPE MedPro Limited will be published in due course, but only once any legal proceedings have been concluded, to avoid any prejudice to the investigation. There were, however, many positives in the response that we must not forget. Businesses and the public rallied enthusiastically to help. The UK had at its disposal the innovation, expertise, and the willingness of domestic life sciences and advanced manufacturing sectors to step up. This was evident in the design and production of PPE, ventilators, and testing equipment, all within the UK. Manufacturers retooled, and businesses used their international connections to source supplies from around the world. The Army stepped in to provide its crisis response expertise and lend its skills to organising an extraordinary logistical operation. Although the lack of planning caused an unnecessary delay in procuring the PPE and other equipment that healthcare workers and others desperately needed, it was a positive feature of the subsequent procurement response that key healthcare equipment was obtained at the speed and scale the crisis demanded. The effective collaboration of the public and private sectors serves as an example of how governments should respond to future pandemics. The UK needs to build on these strengths. The country will not be able to respond effectively without engaging businesses and industry and ensuring that there is a plan to do so in advance of the next pandemic. The procurement and distribution workforce also needs to be more highly skilled and ready for deployment in an emergency.
Tired of heat? 2 NASA engineers have the fix, and it cools rooms in 90 seconds.
Right now, I'm going to leave that because that was about the COVID inquiry.
This is yet another damning indictment of the government's chaos.
Next, UK wildfires happen up and down the country. Dozens of firefighters try to put out blazes in Derbyshire, Essex, Sussex, Essex. Even if the legislature is massive one just yesterday. Because of the Paris, Portugal and Spain are saw record temperatures and so they have wildfires across Spain, Portugal and France. Last week it comes after another record heat wave. It's the third one of the year. And yesterday it was confirmed that 2,700 people had died between the months of May and June due to soaring temperatures.
Smoke relentlessly billows from these burning Peak District moors. The earth and wildlife beneath is gradually being destroyed. The fire service and mountain rescue teams are working together to try to stop this fire at source. That's why we've got one of 2 helicopters here, which are effectively doing laps of this reservoir, Torside Reservoir, collecting water and taking it to the top of Tintwistle Moor to try and douse those flames. These pictures, taken almost 3 weeks ago, show the fire in its early stages, covering around 400 square metres. Now it's estimated more than 640 acres have been burned.
Yeah, it's been quite terrifying.
For those watching the fire edge nearer, it's an unwanted spectacle. Phil helps to run this water sports club at the bottom of the hill.
We are keeping close eye on the wind direction. Yeah, there is a concern. There's lots of flammable material around here. It's very dry.
The smoke prompted an early school pick-up for parents, the dry heat showing no sign of abating.
I think it is a good decision because you can't keep 30 children locked up in a classroom with closed windows.
3 miles away, firefighters remain at Doveston Reservoir 3 days after videos on social media appeared to show fireworks being lit in the area. Today, a 20-year-old woman's been charged with offences including aggravated arson.
The ground is tinder dry, so it is spreading. We've got high temperatures, which have been maintained throughout the rest of the week.
Elsewhere, the flames have come and gone. This stretch of Western Nature Reserve in Southampton is now a charred wasteland. But with no rain on the horizon, places like the Peak District remain at risk. Authorities urging visitors not to add to a workload that's already weighing heavily. Jonathan Brown, ITV News.
Volunteers describe conditions on the moors above Greater Manchester as apocalyptic as fires and moorland groups battle to put 2 wildfires out.
Well, the fires continue to burn, with smoke drifting for miles and miles. Poor air quality has forced some schools to close and is affecting places as far away as the Wirral.
This is Dovestone, right now, where firefighters are still working hard. Earlier today, a 20-year-old woman appeared in court charged with aggravated arson in connection with that fire.
And Moorland at Tintwistle is also still ablaze this evening. Anna Joseph sent this report from Higher Swineshaw, halfway between both fires.
Well, as you can see behind me, a massive operation is still underway to try and take control of these wildfires. The fire on Tintwistle Moor has been raging now for nearly 3 weeks and with no end in sight. Joining me now is Richard Bailey. Richard is from the Peak District Moorland Group. You've been up on those moors. What's it like?
Absolutely horrendous. So we've been involved with wildfires since 2018, Saddleworth, which was just over the hill. This is apocalyptic. The amount of vegetation, the amount of peat that is burning, the smoke is really choking. It's very dangerous conditions.
Is the end in sight?
I don't think so. We've got various control lines which we're trying to contain the fire, but the fire keeps leaping because of these fierce winds and the temperature. So, no, we need rain, and that isn't coming anytime soon.
There's a team of about 20 volunteers currently working up there, and you're working in shifts, aren't you?
Yes, we are. Yes. Just simply, we started on Sunday night, realised that the fatigue was massive, and we decided now to go in shift patterns, so working day and night, along with the fire service who are on site all the time.
Thank you for taking the time to join me.
Thank you.
Stay safe. Well, Richard has actually spoken to me about how valuable all the donations have been from the community. We've had people giving meals, bringing water, and there's been a real coordinated effort at a local cricket club in the area. It really is a sense that the community are coming together to try and help, and I spoke to the manager of that cricket club earlier today.
So cooking 3 times a day, breakfast, dinner and tea, getting them up there. Obviously these guys are up there all night, so they've been up there all night again last night. So they're in on rotas, so coming down, having a bit of a break and then going again. So it's just basically keeping on top of things and keeping them fed and watered.
We also know how the wildfires are continuing to affect the local area. There is dense smoke in the air. In fact, some of the local schools made the decision today to actually shut early. We spoke to some of the families who were affected.
I think because the smoke in the air's got worse and it's got closer, and I can see the difference, from this morning. It is a lot, worse than it was. It was quite clear this morning.
I think there's safety for the children because they're not able to play out. Luckily enough, there is people that can pick them up, but mums work, don't they?
I think it is a good decision because you can't keep 30 children locked up in a classroom with closed windows. It's a very hot, uncomfortable environment. They're not going to learn. They're too hot. They're uncomfortable.
And with the hot weather and high winds expected to continue,
French firefighters are still battling 2 fires south of Paris. Almost 1,500 hectares of the Fontainebleau forest have been burned after the fire began on Sunday. 2 people have been arrested on suspicion of
Next night, the wife of the passenger sucked out of a plane window describes the order. The wife had to grab her husband's legs after half of his body was pulled out of an aeroplane window. We heard about this a couple of days ago. A woman whose husband was practically sucked out of a window during a Ryanair flight has described how half of his body was left sticking out of a plane for up to 2 minutes. That was the wife speaking after her husband was almost sucked out of an airplane window during Ryanair flight just a couple of days ago. Look at this Argentina now. Finally tonight, England fans descend across America as they prepare to face Argentina in the World Cup semi-final tomorrow night in Atlanta at 8 PM. It comes after England both their place there after beating Norway in the quarterfinal 2-1 in Miami. We will cross live and join Foster, who's in Atlanta tonight. Ollie Foster says for us tonight, Ollie, give us what kind of atmosphere are these England fans creating as they build up to their first semi-final match against Argentina tomorrow night? What's the atmosphere like, Ollie? Ollie, how are the England how are the England players preparing? Because this is going to be the toughest and biggest match they're going to face at this World Cup yet. How have the players been getting themselves ready for tomorrow night? Okay, there, Ollie Foster there, Ollie. Well, thank you.
Just 24 hours to go now until England's World Cup semi-final against Argentina in Atlanta, and the fans are getting ready both here and across the Atlantic. First, though, it's France against Spain in Dallas tonight for the other semi-final. Our sports editor, Dan Roan, reports.
For England, they're the rarest of occasions. Since lifting the trophy 60 years ago, only twice have they played World Cup semi-finals. 1990, when they lost on penalties to West Germany. And England are out of the World Cup. And then in 2018, when beaten by Croatia.
All that energy. The ghost of '66 lives on for England.
Now the current generation have earned another chance against defending champions Argentina.
It's us against them to get a place in the final, and it's a game of football. 90 minutes, 120 penalties. We're ready for anything, and it's us against them at the end of the day, and it's about who comes out on top, and we're fully prepared for that.
This is the latest instalment in a classic footballing rivalry, one influenced by historical tensions off the pitch and which has produced no shortage of controversy.
England players protesting to the referee.
Argentina arrived here amid an enhanced security operation. Thousands of officers on duty for one of the tournament's highest risk fixtures. The head of the local organising committee telling me Atlanta can handle the challenge.
A historic rivalry and matchup. There's full faith in the coordination and the collaboration amongst our public safety agencies, and that's from the federal, state, city, and county level. And it's been days and weeks and months and years of coordination to get to this point. So great confidence in the experience that people will have when they come.
England fans are enjoying the build-up here, but for some it's extra special.
You actually remember anything of '66?
Jacob spent his life savings following England here and has been travelling with his granddad Jeff.
I've never been able to experience a final with England yet, so I feel like it will be absolutely incredible. If we win that final, we'll forget about that money for weeks afterwards.
I want to beat Argentina. I want to beat them well. I hope this is the match where we start playing well, ready for the final.
Both these sides boast world-class players.
Gets his hat-trick! What a story!
And both have had to dig deep at times to get this far.
Kane could get a shot in! Oh, yes!
Now, for the first time in a generation, they meet again. A place on the game's grandest stage on the line.
In the last hour, England's preparations ahead of this titanic semi-final have continued. They've been training at their Kansas City base. Later, they'll fly here to Atlanta. So much history, so much passion in this fixture. It's the first time the two teams have met at a World Cup for almost a quarter of a century. It's also, of course, the first time that England will have come up against Argentina's genius and talisman, Lionel Messi. But they also know, Thomas Tuchel's men, that they're just one win away now from a date with destiny and the final itself on Sunday in New Jersey. It doesn't get much bigger.
Tomorrow night here on the BBC. What a night it will be. Dan, thank you. MPs are set to approve the Hillsborough Law, which would create a legal duty for...
It's time for good luck to England. Let's have a look at the weather. It's time for the report for here is Sarah Keefley, because Sarah, good evening, Keegan, good evening to you everybody. So tonight, we'll see areas of low cloud in the east, spreading westward as the night progresses, leaving it cloudy in some southern areas. The large clear across western areas. Northern Ireland into Wednesday, so tomorrow into Wednesday, we're going to see. Tomorrow will be patchy cloud with some areas of low cloud in the east side, but soon cloud will clear, allowing large sunny spells to develop. It's going to be another dry day, but less hot in the south. So go on. Another day, one for many of us tomorrow. So yeah, look for Thursday for today. Thursday is said to be another hot and dry day for most of us. Like I say, it'll be another dry and mostly sunny day. it will be very warm, hot in southern areas. Going into Friday will remain similar, but clouds will build up, so it's going to be a little bit cloudy on Friday. Will build up into northern areas, dry with an odd shower here and there in the far southwest. Saturday could be mostly sunny spells and areas of low cloud drifting into the eastern areas under the northern easterly flow. So it's going to be mostly sunny for Wednesday and Thursday. The odd shower into the weekend. We've got some more lower pressure coming back through the UK. Thank you, Sarah. Keep it safe.
Hello there. Some places had a lot more sunshine than others today, and it had a big impact on the temperatures. Tomorrow, some eastern parts will again start off with a fair bit of cloud, but much of that will break up, I think, to give some spells of hot sunshine. And it is going to remain dry with this area of high pressure firmly in charge. I say it'll remain dry. There is just the chance that we could see a frontal system drifting up from the south. That could provide some thunderstorms for the Channel Islands and just possibly, but only possibly, the far southwest of England. So through tonight, we bring more of that cloud in across eastern Scotland, eastern and perhaps central parts of England. It could turn a little bit murky in places. Quite a warm night for many, 18 for example there in Plymouth, but some parts of northeast Scotland, just like the last couple of nights, could see temperatures dropping down into single digits. So we head into tomorrow, yes, just a chance of a shower for the far southwest of England, for the Channel Islands. Also, this cloud lapping onto the east coast of Scotland and northeast England. But elsewhere, we're looking at lots of sunshine and some very high temperatures, peaking at 30 to maybe 32 degrees down towards the south. Always cooler where the cloud lingers for any length of time on that east coast. Now we head towards Thursday with high pressure still in charge, but this high just starts to retreat westwards, and that will begin to allow a northerly wind to develop, which will drop the temperatures a little as we head towards the end of the week and especially into the weekend, but it is going to remain largely dry.
Again, thank you to Sarah Keith Lucas there. Well, that is it from me for now. I will be back here with the BBC News at 10. I'll be here at 9:45 for the news from us and for the whole team. Have a great evening. Take care. Bye bye.